We got Thompson. Thompson, can you hear us?
Yep.
Yes, good, thank you. Some technological issues to deal with. So can we start with our karakia? Thompson, are you happy to lead us in that, please?
Oh, if it's possible to, is Councillor Harding in the room?
Yes, yes.
Can't quite see. Is it okay if I pass it over to Councillor Harding, Madam Chair?
With leave the chair, I'm happy to do that, Councillor Hokianga, and congratulations on being re-elected, by the way. So, sorry, electioneering, sorry. Well, it wasn't, because you don't need an election. Anyway, so, me karakia tātou. You got one in front of you. Tūtawa mai runga, tūtawa mai runga, tūtawa mai roto, tūtawa mai waho, kia tau ai, te mauri te mauri ora, ki te katoa, haumie, ue, tai kie.
Tai kie.
I do have an apology from Chair Heniwai Ormsby. She sends her apologies, but everybody else is here today. Housekeeping, the meeting is being live streamed on Council's Facebook page and recorded for viewing at a later date on our YouTube channel. In an earthquake, drop cover and hold, and if the shaking is long or strong, when the shaking subsides, leave the building through the nearest exit and proceed immediately toward Napier Hill along Dalton Street to Tiffin Park, continuing up the steps to Cameron Road. If an evacuation emergency alarm sounds, we have to leave the building through the nearest exit and proceed to the assembly area on the grass at the corner of Dalton Street, and emergency exits are clearly signposted. Wharepaku are located down the hall to the left of the chamber entrance. I have a slightly troublesome voice at the moment, so hopefully that holds for the rest of the meeting, but feel free to do more talking than I do today, everybody. All right, so our first matter is conflict of interest declarations. Does anybody have any conflicts to note on the table? No? And our next item of business is confirmation of the minutes of the Risk and Audit meeting held on the 7th of May. So those that were present at that meeting, were you happy with the minutes?
Pretty thin on the ground.
Yeah, we were a bit late that particular meeting.
Needs to be me then.
Yes, it does. Thank you. I'm happy to second it.
Righty.
And everyone who's present is happy with the minutes of those meetings. Say aye. Aye. Good. Those are confirmed. And then we will move into our item 4, which is the Treasury Compliance Report for the relevant period. So, who do we have presenting that one? Tracy and Chris, welcome. Good morning.
Morning.
So we'll take the paper as read, but perhaps either of you could direct us to particular issues you want to raise, and then we'll hand over to the table for questions and comments.
There's no actual particular issues that I think are of importance. I think I'd quite like to go straight into questions, and I'm sure that they will bring up anything that's pertinent. Okay,
around the table, Councillor McIntosh.
Can you just clarify some things for me regarding debt, please? So our current debt, I think, is around 118 or something like that.
Correct.
And it says in here somewhere that we expect in the short term for that to go to 200, depending on Crown repayments.
Yes, so obviously we've got, for the next 2 years, we've got the NEWI project underway. So what happens is obviously is the council pays 100% of the costs, and then the Crown reimburses us. So while there is negotiations going on about how and when the timing of when the Crown will reimburse us, so there will be some time lag on the Crown reimbursements to us. So we expect that it to reach. Just looking here, I think around about 208,000, I think, period, for a short term. But it's basically what we're doing is we're borrowing short term
Yeah.
to fund it, and then obviously repaying it when the Crown pays us back.
Yes, and so am I right in the longer term? So that's kind of doing this a bit over the next couple of years.
Yes.
But in the longer term, the debt build up because of that and other things, does that also get to about 200?
It actually exceeds 200.
Right. And the reason I ask that is because where we've got here on page 6, it gives a helpful number about the net interest on external debt as a percentage of annual rates, which is at 4.18%. So that's the table on page 6, the right-hand column there. And
Yep.
so does that mean a bit longer term, depending on what happens with the rates rises a bit longer term, then if we expect the debt at the time you described to be in excess of 200, does that actually translate to debt as a percent of rates kind of being about 8%?
Yeah, that would be the general assumption around there.
Okay, so that's not a brilliant scenario, is it?
Yeah, I think in all of the modelling that we're doing at the moment, and we are currently trying to do an enhanced model because of the levels of debt that we're expecting in the future years.
Yeah.
But all the modelling so far keeps us below all of our covenants in terms of our 250% of operating revenue and our interest to rates ratio there. What it does start to limit us is for future large activities or anything like that, and so that's why we need to get a very clear model of it to then for future decisions of council to be able to say, well, actually that may not be able to be done in that time frame because of our debt limits at that stage.
Yes, indulge me for a second, Chair. I think it's not so much related to debt limits from my perspective. It's related to the when you see it in the context of rates, and that in itself is a pretty decent increase, even if you do nothing else. So I think it's a message as if we needed it, but it's a real message that we need to be very prudent about stuff we do in future, because that number's, as it stands at the moment, if things pan out, is baked in.
Yep. One of the other things that we're working on at the moment alongside the debt thing is an analysis of our rates so that we can have it in a graphical form that talks about what portion of the rates is repaying stuff that has been done in the past, what's for the current year, and what's being set aside for future
Yeah, I think
years.
that would be a really useful thing to do.
Yeah, I think it will be really helpful for decision making.
Yeah.
We're also breaking down our debt and looking at what has actually created our debt. Is it BAU? Is it what kind of project? Is it the Niue project? Was it cyclone recovery? What has actually caused our debt?
Yeah.
And how are we demonstrating that is actually being reducing, or how are we demonstrating that is actually the proportions are coming down over time? So we feel if we get visuals on it, we can then track it better, and we can actually kind of have it up front before decisions are made on any more future spending.
Yeah, I think that's a sort of a strong endorse that, Chair.
Yeah, interesting to get that that bigger picture oversight so that you can get a real feel for where the money is being concentrated. Yeah, good discussion. Thank you. Yes, Sam.
Kia ora, Chair. Look, and if I can just follow up through you a little bit more on the debt question. So section, so 26 and 27 on the table under there talk about ratios, and those are set down in the Local Government Act, those measures. They're not actually that helpful in understanding what our true debt constraints are. Now, I mean, following on from Jock's point, debt's not great and it's really, really expensive, but this part of the paper doesn't really clearly show where's the ceiling and what's causing it, which is the trigger, which is the thing that worries us most, and whether that's, so it's not clear in the paper what that is. So it would be good in future, well, it'd be good to be clear about what that is, and in future to be able to monitor that a bit better. So that was point one. The second point is just around the cost, that interest cost. So part of this funding problem is a timing. It's a lag between our spending and our claiming back. We have a balance sheet, we can use it. My question is just around that interest cost. Have we resolved with government whether that interest is claimable against those NIWI, those weather event projects or not? Because I think that was a live question recently.
As far as I'm aware, there's been no further change to the stance that they are not claimable under the contract.
Okay, all right, so it's as scary as it looks then? Yeah, okay, thank you. So, but back to the question about what is driving the debt ceiling? What is the thing that we're actively managing to, other than the overall costs? What is the trigger for no more debt? Because if you look at that table, it goes, oh, we've got lots of room, right?
Yeah.
I guess the big thing is, especially in the ratios that we do here, is that we're able to, for the LGFA count, some of our liquid assets as to offset the debt. And that's why we end up with a negative percentage when we're looking at debt compared to total operating revenue, where we have a limit of 250%. You know, one of the things in terms of the graph that we're talking about with the better analysis of the future is that'll be looking at the pure external debt compared to that limit. I think the trigger for me will be, once it's really when we're getting to that 200% of the, where the limit's 250%, we need to be a lot more cognizant of what our future decisions are going to be. And this graphical representation that we're pulling together at the moment and that will be coming to a lot of different meetings in terms of our financial reports, and that will make sure that that's at the forefront of mind for everyone for looking out to the future. So not just what we've available to do at the moment, but what does that mean in the future, and what other projects are or are not included in that picture at that point in time.
Okay, look forward to that. Thank you.
So basically what we'll do is this graph we're talking about, we'll add it into this report.
Yeah.
So we've always got a forward-looking picture, which you don't currently have.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Yeah, maybe just one couple of points on that. I wonder if that's something that we could refer specifically through to corporate and strategic to be looking at.
Yes, we could, yeah.
Detail
Yep.
around the Treasury policy and so forth, because it's one of those areas that the risk gets highlighted here,
Yep.
but we don't look into the detail behind it.
Okay, I'm happy to do that.
I just wanted to add to the comments of the team to say that the intention of this will be, it's a live tool to be used in decision making. So it should be used then to help inform choices that we make within the long-term plan and give you real-time insights into what those decisions will do to the debt profile, but also how we would choose to fund these things. So the idea is to give council greater insight when making those decisions.
Thank you.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Nice to see you again. Again, the same question. Going to paragraph 27 and the table, just wanting to know more about the very first line in the table, net external debt as a percentage of revenue. I'm getting different figures. Number one, is it operating revenue or comprehensive revenue that we're talking about?
It's operating revenue less fair value gains.
Okay. I've got 100 or close to 150 mil of operating revenue and net external debt of 117. So I'm putting 117 over 150.
Sorry, there'll also be we take the gross debt, we take off our liquid assets, which will include any cash we've got on hand, and at the moment we also obviously offset managed funds, and we're using the LTIF fund as cash as well, offsetting that against it as well, and then that gives us our net debt, and then we put that over top of the revenue.
So effective net debt at the moment is negative. We have effectively cash reserve, we have more cash than we have external debt. And so that ratio turns out as a negative in the pure sense of what the ratio is supposed to measure. That's what I was talking about before, that in some of these when we're looking at a graph that we will prepare in a model, we'll look at it as just the gross debt, excluding the offset that we can do.
But when I asked earlier about, was it operating revenue? So is it operating revenue?
Yes, it's operating.
Are you treating the other, I would have included it in a comprehensive revenue.
No, it's operating revenue.
Yeah, okay, so you take operating revenue, which is 150 million.
Sorry, I haven't got that figure in front of me. I know that I took it from the annual report for this.
Yeah,
the
I'm
draft
looking
reports.
at it now, and our operating revenue is 149,301.
Yeah.
And I'm just doing a straight line calculation, taking our debt at 117.
Yeah.
117 over 150.
Yeah. Can I perhaps take you through the formula that we use, which is the LGFA calculation, after this meeting? Or I don't actually have the information at hand. I'm sorry, I can't take you through the specific numbers.
I'm sure it'll be very exciting, and we could do it now if you. That's fine.
No, that's okay. And then if there's anything to come out of that conversation, perhaps it goes through to corporate and strategic.
What I can do then is perhaps also make the numbers transparent in this report as well, and say this is what we actually did and this is what we've done, the offsets that we've done against it, and this is the figures that we've got, so that we can actually clearly give you comfort that how the numbers are actually calculated, because there is some times where our policy and the LGFA policy and all that don't always 100% align, and I think that we need to have that transparency across that.
Okay, thank you.
Kia ora, Chair. Look, I just, in support of my fellow councillors' take on those ratios, I think what the underlying point from a risk management point of view is comfort in knowing that the way that the calculation, that actually these are the liquid assets, that there's an appropriate source of liquid assets. So that's the question, I think, for this team here.
Yep.
And it's a good thing to dive into. Thank you. Can I just have a go at the silt and debris fund, please? So, para 13 talks about the funds being fully utilised by 30th of June. I'm not sure whether that includes Wairau. There was a little chunk for Wairau to help them out. Just have in my head there might have been a further extension for that, or that might have been 30 June. But I'm just... And that any unspent funds will be returned to the Crown. Having been involved in the program to actually, that part of the program where affected property owners were able to apply to that commercial fund, I'm aware of some of the complexities of both the audit process that's involved there, and the requirement to actually return funds if they didn't meet if they were unable to be expended or otherwise didn't meet the terms of the fund. It's a very big fund. I have something like 112 million, I think. So my question is there going to be a final report and an analysis for the purposes of this from a risk-based point of view to ensure that two things. One is you'd expect on any kind of program of funding of that scale that there will be some kind of introspection at the end of it to go, how did that go? Did we do well? Which I think we did, but also, and learnings. So that's one part of it. But also from a risk management point of view, are we safe? Because the council is on the hook back to the Crown for any risks around the way that we distributed the funds. So we ought to be concerned that we are safe in that. And I just can't recall that we've ever had a comprehensive report back on the completion of that whole fund.
Through you, Chair. As far as I'm aware, there is a final report and there was an audit process going on. And so happy to follow up with the then task force manager and provide a copy.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Anyone else on the Treasury report? Councillor Hokianga, did you have anything online? Wanted to raise?
No, nothing from me.
Okay. All right. So we're noting this for information, so we're just receiving and noting the Treasury Compliance Report for the April-June quarter. Can I have someone to move that? Councillor Harding, thank you. Second, Councillor McIntosh. Everyone in favour?
Just in speaking to the motion, I just wanted to congratulate the finance team for the successful confirmation of our Fitch credit rating at AA against, in an environment which is difficult and an environment where a number of councils have received downgrades recently. So well done. That speaks to the quality of the work that was done for that original application and the consistency of the work and the financial management since. Thank you.
So are we happy to pass the motion that we're receiving and noting that paper?
No.
In favour? Good. Thank you. Okay, so we're now moving on to item 5, which is the risk management update. Now, there's a number of key topics in there, and I'd like to approach it topic by topic, as we have in the past. There are a couple of attachments for that paper and for that item, and I'm aware that sometimes those discussions that flow from our investigation of the risk papers can start to get into areas of legal privilege or certain controls that we need to be mindful of and perhaps need to talk about in public excluded. So the attachments themselves, in terms of any of the detail around that, if people want to raise anything on those, we will deal with those when we move into the public excluded section of the meeting, okay? So anything in the paper we will discuss, but anything that comes out of the sorts of controls that are not necessarily clear from the document itself, but raises further question about the detail, we'll move into public excluded. Okay, so Pip, we're going to talk about the wider external context first. Yes, so yes, if you could go here and about the wider external context too, or just
me at the moment. Kia ora.
the new seat?
Yeah. Kia ora, everybody. Again, we'll take the paper as read, but we'll just touch on some highlights before I start to introduce members of the team who will dive into a bit more of the detail. So, firstly, you'll be aware that we are currently operating in a somewhat uncertain environment from the central government. We have a number of changes coming down the pipe with RMA reform, as well as Minister Bishop requesting that we pause any unnecessary planning events. It's been discussed at Regional Council before what that means for us and where our attention is going. We will continue with our hazard planning work and our work with Tank, but other plan work has paused in the interim. We have issued the pre-election report, and I'd just like to acknowledge the staff who pulled that together. It's a really great read if you're so inclined, but that outlines key issues for voters and candidates, and is aimed to foster informed public discussions. Internally, there's been some key personnel changes at ELT, with Richard Wakeland being appointed permanently in the GM role of ICM, and myself being appointed as GM of Corporate Services to take over Susie's role. We have appointed Mike McGarvey, who is here today and will come and take a seat at the table when we dive into technology risk as the interim CIO, to take us through to the end of the year, and we start a recruitment process for that seat. We have tabled the first report from our efficiency and effectiveness review, outlining the core issues facing this council, and we are now working through an action plan to address a number of those things that will be coming to council at the end of August. Of note is our shared services program, which we have initiated in collaboration with Napier City. And we're looking to explore shared services opportunities, both to increase efficiency and effectiveness, but also to reduce cost to the community. The first project in that overall program is for risk services. The service level agreement of what risk services will look like as a shared offering between Napier City and Hawke's Bay Regional Council has been agreed, and the structure of that team has been confirmed. Recruitment process is now underway to fill those seats, and we have, it's been probably not moved at the pace that we would have liked because Napier City is going through a rather large restructure at the same time, and this restructure for them forms part of that larger overall picture. So it's been wrapped up with that, but we are looking to have that in place in the coming months. I'll skip over technology because I'll bring Mike up to talk to that shortly. I think with regards to financials, the audit kicking off from 1 September, aim to conclude towards the end of that month. That's probably the big ticket items in terms of context, given that you have had updates at Council about NIWI and the independent review recommendations as well. Before I turn to technology, are there any questions?
Yeah, so let's just see if we look at the paper before that point. So we had the wider external context. Does anyone around the table have any queries or comments to make on that part of the paper? So that's paragraphs 12, I think, to 15.
Thanks, Madam Chair. It took me a while to try and navigate my way through this and to decide what was internal and what was external, and to try and link it back to our dashboard and, if you like, the structure we put in play there. It occurred to me, maybe the way I read things, but it seemed somewhat haphazard without too much structure, and I wondered whether there was room to link to our, what is it called? We've got purpose and vision, success, and then we've got planning, community resilience, effectiveness and efficiency, confidence from the community, principles of Tiriti. So we've got a structure, A to E structure, in the dashboard, and I just wondered whether we can match that somehow to the risk management update, or the risk management update reflects the dashboard. Is that something we could look at? So
absolutely. Yeah, really happy to review the format and make sure that you're getting what you need and alignment with that framework.
And just to go a little step further, I see we've recorded under the internal council operating environment the shared services structure, even though it's outside the collaboration is outside external. So I'm struggling to know, is it inside or outside? Did we have a paper on the shared services structure, that operational structure? Have we done any? Has this committee had a line of sight on that shared services arrangement?
No, I don't believe you have, but I think it would be valuable for us to present the overarching framework and dive into some of the detail associated with the risk project itself, and then talk more about what we're looking to achieve in the future.
Sure, yeah. It's just to follow on, Madam Chair, because I saw that as somewhat of a strategic move, and good on you, well done. But to my way of thinking, there could have been some, if you like, governance consideration in it. And I note the priority around sort of risk management, space, etc. I'm not quite sure exactly where that's heading, but I wondered whether there was room to to include the likes of capital projects. We've got an arrangement forthcoming around the stormwater transition, whether that in fact could fall under that umbrella. I'm just trying to think of the connection, because it will be a shared service for a period of time. So stepping back, can we look at perhaps a paper that outlines where that's heading and what the expectations are, how much savings we're wanting to make, and then looking at the priorities around it. And as I say, choosing risk management is one scenario. IT is clearly another. So the vehicle fleet, etc. So there were probably a long list of areas of shared service, and it'd be interesting to have some line of sight on where you're heading, so that when we as governors are talking to governors on the other side, we say, oh gosh, aren't we doing well collaborating on these things? So it's got if you like, an external element, which I think needs to be considered as a part of the framework.
Yes, I absolutely agree. So really happy to bring greater visibility to council on this.
Thank you.
I think on that, I mean, it's a tricky one, isn't it? You need to be careful not to be diving into the operational side of things, but then keeping that strategy and oversight is really important. I think for this committee, that oversight piece is around risk being a shared service, and how that impacts on the risk framework that this committee has supported the council through from a governance perspective for several years now, and we're still not quite there. So I'm interested in that around not outsourcing, but shared servicing a risk model when there are still some opportunities to put appropriate governance practices in place around that. The oversight, the assurance, the controls are still not quite there from a risk perspective, I don't think. So I'm concerned about how we still get that level of oversight and how we get the assurances that we need to have, that we haven't been having for quite some time. If that is going to be delayed further potentially, or changed in some way by having it as a shared service model. And it's not necessarily a question that you need to answer now, but it's an observation to think of for the next time this committee meets, and maybe some conversations we need to have in the interim, perhaps. Councillor Harding.
Kia ora, Chair. Look, just following up on that, two things. One is that I think corporate and strategic or full council meeting would be the right place to bring a paper on shared services. So I was surprised as the chair of corporate and strategic to read about new shared services. So it would, it's great that we've got a shared services strategy, but I think there's just a bit of reporting to catch up on what we're doing, where we're going. But I think that's going to be all very positive. So that was the first thing on that. The second thing is that, and just really echoing and reinforcing your comments, Chair, that from a risk point of view, there's arguably nothing more risky than devolving your risk assurance and controls, which is on the basis of this paper where we're starting. Now, as said, and also in the context of a partner in NCC that's reportedly not ready, right? So that's the glass half empty version of looking at that. The glass half full version, and my preferred version, is that we've made huge strides in our risk framework in the last 18 months or so, due to outstanding external resources that we've brought to bear, and the thought of having a more durable, affordable framework where we share those that extra horsepower that we've been able to bring to it is fantastic. So, and I imagine that that's part of what's in behind that. So, yes. But a paper on shared services and then describing this particular example coming through to corporate and strategic would do exactly that.
We will make sure you get that information, and I think just to reassure you, there is no intention to change the risk framework that's been starting to embed here at Hawke's Bay Regional Council. There will be continuity of that through this new service.
Thank you.
Chair, if I just, I'm going to struggle to make a question out of this because it's more an observation. If you look at the executive summary there, 2 to 12, actually for me that's really useful to see the list like that because it does highlight the extent of things that are on the go that you wouldn't describe as business as usual. And when you've got that variety of stuff happening, that's not business as usual, the potential for things to go awry is high. And so I think for me it comes back to the efficiency and effectiveness review we're having undertaken. That's given us some initial information which is quite good, but it's extraordinarily important that the recommendations and actions that evolve out of that, A, we're all bought into, but B, they happen. Because if they don't happen, then we just increase the chances of not doing a good job in this other stuff, because all this other stuff is saying to me, you need to be really efficient about the way you go about your business, because otherwise you're not going to cope with it. So, yeah, I failed to get a question, but that was the observation.
Is there a response to the observation?
I agree. Oh, no, Nick, you.
Through you, Chair. Yeah, I think that the efficiency and effectiveness review has highlighted the amount of commitment this organisation has got, both to BAU and additional things to BAU, and refining that down to what we really need to focus on is going to be a critical part of the future, and that allows then the organisation to be shaped and sized to meet that demand. So absolutely agree, implementation is going to be key. I think there's an action plan workshop with the consultants next week in advance of a final action plan coming to council for approval at the end of the month. So agree with everything the council said.
Okay. Right. I think the next, so if there's nothing else on that internal operating environment piece.
Sorry to do that to you, Madam Chair. I just, one of we touch on paragraph 3, leadership change. Is there, but in the past we've had, if you like, workforce issues, if you like, come to the table in risks around workforce appointment, recruitment, etc., those sorts of matters. Is there room to where do I look for and focus on that particular issue and ask questions about that?
I haven't included workforce issues in this paper. My apologies if that was an omission.
No, it's not an omission. It's in the past we have.
Yep. It
seems to have sort of gone left. I'm not sure whether all those workforce issues have been completely resolved and we're all happy campers. But I'd imagine that there are ongoing matters. I mean, we've had change of leadership, etc. Is there scope to bring back a section that talks about that?
Yes, I think there could be. We've got, let me speak to the others to find out what's been presented before, and then I'm sure we can reincorporate those highlighted personnel risks.
I think the focus may have been, when it was looked at in the past, that there were certain aspects of that risk dashboard that were in jeopardy because of the hiring difficulties. And there were several roles that had been vacant for a long period of time, and certain things that had been identified in an audit, for example, weren't being actioned. So, yeah, but I think that ties into some of those deep dives that we've had in the past that aren't on the agenda for this meeting.
Sorry, I may have got myself out of it.
No, but I think it's a good point, because there's a lot in here on staff, and so I think the question is what impact is that having on the risk management framework, and we're not necessarily seeing any of those deep dives coming through so that we can ascertain if there's an issue that's linked to any recruitment issues.
Being such a big chunk of the whole workforce is what we hear.
Yes.
Mostly, so examining risk around that is pretty important.
Yeah. and Pip and I had discussed previously, being able to pick up some of those deep dives again, to be able to flesh out those sorts of issues. Us around the table. So we've done the first two main sections of the paper. The next one was around the NIWI and flood resilience program. But if you folk are looking at those in more detail in the other meetings, it's perhaps not something to focus on particularly, unless you had something to raise, Councillor Harding.
Kia ora, Chair. Look, that's exactly, when I read the paper, that was exactly my thought, that other committees get fulsome reporting on the NIWI, so it's really just a risk management. I mean, it's good that for those, including yourself, that aren't involved in those other briefings, to get an overview is great. But we don't need to be concerned about, I think, the detail of individual projects, really just how we're managing risk. And I just note, in terms of the progression through the paper, we've still got the IT side of things, yes, technology projects. So, and I've got some questions there, so it'd be great.
We'll work through it. So in terms of the NIWI and the independent review recommendations, noted and taken as read, but given that they're looked at by either other committees or council in full, I don't think we need to go into those in any more detail unless there's something.
Chair, I'd just say the interesting point for me is that we've got, and I think it's Price Waterhouse, I don't think it mentions it in the paper, but we've got an independence assurance program, and an advisor as part of that now. So we've got external assurance in that program now, which is great.
That is a good point that's worth noting, and we'll perhaps note that in the minutes around having that external assurance piece.
Yeah, that's at point 28.
Okay, so the next point is around the health, safety and wellbeing program update. Is there anything in particular you want to?
I would like to invite Amy and Will and Robin to come and speak to that.
I might do a couple of introductions and then promptly hand over to the subject matter experts. So we've got Robin Ross here with us today. Robin has been the acting head of health and safety for the last 3 months, and the work that you see described in the paper is largely the work that Robin has undertaken during her time with us. Sadly, today is actually Robin's last day, so we'll take this opportunity to thank her for her hard work as well. But I'm also very pleased to introduce you to Will Roberts, who is our new permanent head of health and safety. This is Will's second week in the role. He's joined us from, now I always get this wrong, Thames Coromandel District Council, so has seen the light and moved to the Bay. He's here primarily to meet you all, but equally to the extent there's questions about forward work program and the like, a combination of Robin and Will be able to handle those for you. Are you comfortable to take the content in the paper as read, or would you like Robin to speak to that and give a brief summary of what's in there?
I think we can take it as read. The main point, I think, maybe just to flesh out a little bit for our benefit, is we've been focusing very much on this ISO certification, and that arose out of an audit that was done many moons ago now. But it doesn't necessarily follow, does it, that ISO accreditation and legal compliance are the same thing. So maybe just refresh our memory around how the ISO fits in with the overall health and safety obligations.
So you're correct. Certification or alignment to ISO 45001 does not give legal compliance, but it helps with giving you a formal, standardised, consistent structure across the whole organisation on how you are meeting your various requirements. It does assist with meeting your legal requirements, but it just means that it doesn't matter where you're working across the organisation, the system is the same. It gives the council and the ELT confidence that the systems are working, particularly if you have got all the processes in place with your internal audits and your external verification. My understanding it was you weren't going for certification, you were only going for alignment, which is a lot more helpful. Part of my findings is that the reason there's been a delay in getting that alignment is that there is actually no consistency across the organisation with some of the way we do things.
Any other queries or observations around the table?
I just want to in terms of comment I made earlier about, if you like, workforce and employment, do you think in terms of structure, and Robin, welcome aboard, Robin.
Well,
Sorry, got mixed up here. Do you think we could aggregate workforce issues and health and safety issues in our reporting or to this committee for discussion? Is that something that works?
I think from my perspective, I think it could. I'm not aware of the nature of the workforce reporting you've had previously, so what sorts of issues or risks have been surfaced, but certainly I can see some synergies there, but I think to Pip's point, we probably need to go back to what you had got into a routine of receiving. I think there was a suggestion that that was kind of related to particular risks. So yes, I think they could fit together, but we probably just need to get our head around, what you've become accustomed to seeing and how we can most efficiently wrap that into the report.
I'm not suggesting that the previous reports worked. They may not have.
Right.
What I'm suggesting is, and I'm working in other environments where we do lump health and safety in with the whole workforce capacity, capability, etc. thing, and sure they're two sections, but they are related. And I just wondered, from our perspective, if we had line of sight on both health and safety and workforce, we sort of build a picture of.
May I ask a question, just in terms of the information you're interested in about the workforce, to the extent that perhaps what you've received historically is not what you're seeking moving forward, what are the areas of interest? I'm just keen to understand that.
I'll rephrase. I'm not suggesting that what we had in the past was the gold standard and we need to adopt that. Maybe it needs to change. But what I'm thinking about is there are some workforce metrics that are helpful to us to understand the risks that are going on in that environment. Just there are also some metrics in health and safety which help us, if you like, assess the risk in that environment. So there may be a small table about staff retention rates, etc. And sometimes they link closely with both health, safety and wellbeing. So there is that connection, but nevertheless, on its own, workforce issues are worth talking about.
Through you, Chair, perhaps I could follow up and just offline, because we do provide staff metrics and health and safety metrics through to in our quarterly report to corporate and strategic. So let's just figure out where those best lie.
Mm-hmm. Anything else on health and safety?
Just observe that it's great that we're now on track to deliver ISO equivalence. It's been a while coming, and I know it's been, Chair, one of your pet peeves, if I can put it that way. So you must be pleased.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for your work.
Thanks to the staff. Thanks for your work. Welcome, Will, and we look forward to making lots of progress in this area. Thank you.
I think it's great to have everyone involved. Thank you for your work that you've done to date. A huge amount of work's been done And I think it's just a matter for noting from our perspective, we've been tracking the ISO accreditation, but it's just remembering where that fits in terms of the overall framework, and particularly around those obligations to due diligence obligations to ensure health and safety. This is it. Okay, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Through you, Chair, if I could just make one brief comment on health and safety. I think post the Ports of Auckland decision recently, chief executives across the sector are having a look at issues around liability. So I expect to be able to come back with some information that the sector's come together as a whole. Look at some of those issues, given that judgment.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. We'll jump ahead now to the IT section of the paper, which is around 39 to 41, I think. So, welcome. Back over to you, Pip.
Kia ora again. I'd like to introduce Mike McGarvey, who I said is stepping in as the interim CIO whilst we figure out our recruitment strategy for that permanent role. Mike comes to us from 13 years at Unison, where he was CIO there for 5 years. Just touching on some of the technology elements of the report. Mike's only been in place for a few days, so I'm happy to read through in my happy place. But we are kicking off a number of fairly large technology projects to address technical and operational risk. Those include a contract management module, which will be implemented into our Tech One platform. Work is progressing at pace there to ensure that we capture a lot of the work going over on the NIWI projects. We expect that module to be in place by end of August, early September. We are implementing a new rates system to replace our aging legacy technology. It's a like-for-like replacement, moving from an older style technology to a cloud-based technology, but with the same provider, chosen primarily based on risk and reducing the risk. They have done these migrations many times, and we have a high degree of confidence in their ability to execute this program successfully. That new technology will be in place next financial year. So this financial year we are running the rates again on our legacy platform, and I just note that we have bolstered security and resilience of that platform, including the setup of a failover server on premise here that can be stood up within 20 minutes should anything go wrong. Speaking of resilience, our network is what runs, our connectivity. We are bolstering the resilience of our building here at 159 Dalton by putting a Starlink up on the roof, which will give us emergency connectivity should we need it. And we are also putting in place what I call a failover or redundant internet service provider, so that if our internet service provider services are cut, we can push across to a secondary as well. Both of those two things are really cost-effective ways to provide some sort of backup to our connectivity. Whilst we're talking about IT, I just want to touch on numbers 40 to 42 around some of the controls and assurance that we're putting in place. I brought a lot of these to the previous committee, but just wanted to give you an update on progress. Firstly, we implemented our new cyber training framework. It's a framework called Know Before. I'm sure our staff love it because they are now asked to do far more regular training in cyber, and managers get really informative dashboards about who's completing, who hasn't, who's passed, who's failed. So much more information at our fingertips to help ensure that our staff are well trained and well aware. It's also delivering far more relevant local content. So I'm really happy with that rollout. SAM for compliance, strange name, but that's what it's called, is a local government cyber assurity framework. It's got approximately 350 controls from memory. We are working through level 1 compliance. The majority of councils around the country also adopt this framework. At some point, we will be able to benchmark ourselves against our peers. And lastly, in this space, we are doing a really comprehensive review of our back-end technology, encompassing networks and infrastructure, both from a resilience perspective, which I've touched on, but also to optimise our spend in this space. So we are looking at where do we get our most cost-effective solutions, particularly because public cloud is becoming increasingly expensive. So we're doing a full review. It will last most of this year, making sure that what we have in place is fit for purpose, has got appropriate resilience and redundancy built in, but is also cost-effective. Where appropriate, we are looking at opportunities to share and align with Napier and Hastings. There were no significant risks, or incidents this quarter from an IT perspective.
Questions around the table on the IT side of the report?
The new rate system, is that something that is used in other councils? Is it the same? Okay, yes. So we're not the guinea pigs for
We are not guinea pigs by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, we're one of the few councils still left on the legacy platform. Okay. So we are adopting a more aligned strategy with other councils.
Councillor Harding, did you have a question?
I did. I've got a few actually, but if first through you, if I can ask, Pip, I think I heard you say public cloud is increasingly expensive. Mm. So does that mean that that's taking us towards shared services where we control our own mini cloud, if you like?
There is no one size fits all when it comes to cloud, and what we need to do, there is a place for public cloud without question, but it's not the place for everything. And I give the example of test servers that we currently have sitting up in public cloud, which in my view is too expensive for what's needed. Our colleagues at Hastings do have built a data centre, of which Napier already rents space there. We will look at that to see whether or not that is an appropriate space for some of our kit. There does remain a case, however, for some out-of-region resilience and backup. So fundamentally, there are a number of options available to us. We have a public cloud, we have private cloud in region, we have on-prem, and what we want to do is really assess what are the requirements that we have around performance, because distance creates lag. What are the requirements that we have around regional resilience? So if we have something primarily based here, does it need a backup out of region? And also, where can we get efficiencies? Where do we not need to use it? Where can we bring it back on-prem or test servers? This is really Mike's sweet spot. So I'm just going to see if he's got anything further to add.
Yeah, there's quite a complex series of things to consider with regard to public cloud. When we say it's expensive to host old traditional style software. If you've got software that's been optimised for the cloud, it's better. So, for example, we take our Technology One finance system, for example, as a service, software as a service. They have the relationship with the public cloud. It's none of our business. So ultimately that's where we want to get to with most of our services, SaaS. In the interim, some of the in-country hosting, what I'd call, it's less public cloud, it's more hosting arrangements that are just out there, have got more expensive over time. So it makes sense to try and bring that into a local environment if we can. The economics around hardware and hosting is changing really quite rapidly on us at the moment. So at the moment, ironically, we're almost looking like we're going back to a more traditional thing, but in a shared sense, not something we would do individually ourselves. But as we modernise our applications, there's different considerations depending on where that particular application is in the life cycle, if you like.
I have another question, but I think Councillor Curtin also had his hand up, so if he's ready with
just a very minor one. Can you tell me when the current rating scenario has gone live online? When did that happen?
Gosh, I don't have the numbers to my fingertips. I think it's about a decade old.
No, sorry. This year's. When can landowners or households look online and see what their rates are for the current year? When does that happen?
I don't believe that online rates notices is in scope for the rates replacement project. What we're replacing in this particular project is the ability to strike the rates and issue the rates notices. At the moment, there is no project for self-service or web-enabled rates.
No, it's probably not my question.
Sorry if I'm not answering the question.
We currently...
Oh, the rates calculator.
Well, it's not the calculator, it's the... Find Your Rates is the title online. So you go online, put in your address and brings your rates up for the year. So does this interface with that? Does it populate the online portal?
No, not this rate system, no. I believe that, let me double check for you on that one. I believe that that's a tool that comms and engagement create. So let me take that away as something to find out how but I don't believe that's got any integration through the rate system.
I just assumed.
No, I don't believe it does. I think it is a standalone calculator.
Well, it's not so much a calculator. I'm assuming this is the real deal because it's giving me my last year's rates, this year's rates, and I'm assuming that it's not. See the calculator. I'm assuming that what's calculated comes from somewhere, and that's the same system you're talking about. I don't
think there's an integration directly through to the rates platform, but I'll check that for you because that's interesting.
Yeah.
It's one to take offline.
Okay.
But if there is, it's a like-for-like upgrade, so that functionality would remain in play through the upgrade process.
Okay.
If it's integrated, it will be integrated to the cloud version as well.
Okay. Thanks.
Kia ora, Chair. Look, I have a question around overall assurance for ICT. So another part of our business, for example, on the front end of our business, we would have regular reporting through to this organisation about how those front end bits of the organisation are working. Right? That's not something that we see either in this committee or other committees for our ICT environment. I'm using words dangerously that I don't understand, but the whole point is that it's a thing that we talk about, but it's invisible, right? And so we're in a situation where things are reported through because they're easy to report rather than they're all the things that ought to be reported. So ICT seems to me be there in that, it's really, really complicated and you get all these spaghetti diagrams and we're not even sure we understand it ourselves. And and therefore it's hard enough for us to understand, let alone communicate it to a bunch of people who don't understand ICT. So that is a risk, right? Now, the answer is probably that we've got external assurance functions going on in the way as we redesign or as we take on new services, as we redesign our ICT environment, but we're not seeing that. So just flagging that there's kind of a gap there due to the complexity. So it would be really good if we could fill that in from an assurance point of view, because it's simply invisible to us at the moment.
Yeah, we see more detail on that area than other areas that we also don't necessarily get assurance on. But I take your point and agree. It's one of the areas that this committee needs greater oversight of the assurances around.
Yeah, look, an example, just talk about rates. The ability, that's not all of our cash flow, but it's a large proportion of our cash flow. So, and we know from a legal position how important it is for the integrity of rates and actually the right to levy rates. Perfection is required, right? Both in the way that the rates orders are struck and then following through to the way they're billed. So this is really mission critical stuff. Then I had lots of red and orange, highlighting going, hey, we're replacing our our rating system. Now, you've told us that it's the same provider and there's been an assessment done based on cost and risk. I have a question about how and the relativities of that, but I think you explained it, and it is low risk because you're staying with the existing provider and you're actually just going to a modern, more hopefully resilient platform. And I'll put my own concerns about ultimate vulnerability of SaaS to one side and accept that that's probably safer than operating ourselves. So that's good, but it's an illustration of that it's a massive change, which is mission critical, that we have no idea about the assurance and about the weighting of the decision when we come to choosing a supplier about cost versus risk. So it would just be nice from a risk committee point of view to have a better window into that.
I, firstly, am always happy to talk about technology. We have a really clear strategy, firstly, through to 2030, which I think I would be very, very happy to sit in whatever is the appropriate forum and talk through that overall technology landscape, where we're at as a council and where we want to go to and why and what we're trying to achieve, and then also layer over that where the assurance points are, both from a retrospective sort of audit assurance, but also from the assurance that we get when we make these decisions around, going to this cloud provider for rates, and how we make those decisions and the level of assurance that we put in place to ensure that we're making good decisions. So I'm not sure what the appropriate forum would be, but very, very happy to take you through that because I feel very comfortable with where we're heading and the decisions that we're making.
I think that's something that this committee looks for increasingly is the assurances. I know Councillor Curtin has spoken about that at length in the past as well, wanting to make sure that we have assurances over the right areas and given the significance of IT, that's a crucial area to be looking at. So perhaps that could be something for the next meeting of this committee, whomever forms part of that committee, because it'll be after the election. But having some detail around the controls and processes and assurances piece, I think, would be of interest. Okay, anything further from anyone on IT? Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think next we should have David, I believe. Conscious of time. As well, how are you looking? Welcome, David. Hello.
Kia ora koutou.
I'm conscious of time, and to get the best out of the information that you have for us today, and also noting my earlier comment about some of the detail in the attachments being dealt with in public excluded later. So is there anything in particular you want to draw our attention to on the risk management approach or the risk profile before or the internal control environment before we hand over to the folk around the table?
Just briefly, I wanted to first of all thank everyone for the participation within the sentiment survey, which is a fundamental part of us enabling a shared view around confidence concern that underpins the risk approach. So we had 100% response rate in the sentiment survey, which was fantastic. So what that means is that when you are looking at the dashboard and when you're looking at the collective views and the comparisons between, I think we've got the sort of rich information that we can use to really focus the conversation on the things that collectively you say matters to you. The other thing I'll just touch on briefly in the paper is that there is from paragraph 58 onwards, linking risk with key aspects of internal controls. There's a very broad summary there around what has been called critical controls, but are the key management practices and activities within council that effectively manage those broad areas of risk that are set out within the dashboard, being the strategic risk profile. So in terms of the previous conversation and the intention to show a link between key areas of risk, the controls to manage risk, and the sources of assurance that give confidence that those controls are fit for purpose and working effectively. In part, that's the role of the one-page plans that support each of those areas on the risk dashboard. And in part, it's the reason for the approach to critical controls testing, which has been in place for a period of time now, of which the third of those critical control testing activities focused on policy framework is the subject of one of the attachments that we'll be talking about later on today. So look, happy to stop there and answer any broad questions around the risk approach in this session, and we'll go into the specific aspects of the risk profile and the policy framework review later.
Kia ora, Chair. Through you, thank you, David. Great news that we got a 100% participation in the survey, so that there's been a bit of work in the background, a bit of cajoling, a bit of reminding going on, but I think councillors now understand the report better. I think the survey, when it comes out, the upfront piece is a bit simpler than it used to be, so it's not as difficult to interpret. So that combination has come together, and we now have a great tool, and I thank you for it. And in terms of, and we've got some interesting paragraph numbering going on in our report. We don't have a para 58, and we've got a couple of 56s, but and the first 56 we're looking at talks about the difference between councillor concern versus the executive leadership concern. And I just note that a number of those in 52.3, culture, capacity, capability of people, coordination and connectedness, effectiveness of external partners and shareholder relationships are all matters that are of focus in the efficiency and effectiveness review. So there's actually quite a strong alignment between where that's going and the concerns that councillors have been highlighting. So it's looking consistent. Thank you.
Answer on the table?
I think I might have asked this before and have forgotten the answer, but the difference between councillors and ELT, when I see the subjects that relates to, I'm not particularly concerned. In fact, I'm not even sure that it's that unusual to have that sort of difference, but can you comment on that?
Excuse me. Apologies. Just the fact that there's a difference in sentiment or perspective is not a problem in and of itself. So, and typically that difference has been a common theme over several cycles of the sentiment survey. So I don't think it's an issue, but it does give some good information for where you might want to focus the conversation.
Else? I think there might be some more questions to be had later on this morning, so if that's the case. Oh, sorry.
Happy to move the paper.
Yes, good.
Could I just make it, sorry, ask for it, but I didn't respond. The sentiment survey, David, is one thing. Obviously, there are different sources of intelligence coming through. We've so far concentrated on the sentiment survey. I mentioned earlier at the start that some of the issues, maybe we structure them, if you like, under those headings we've got in the framework. Have you got any comment on, if you like, improving or increasing the level of intel we're getting through this process, through the framework?
First is aligning the general update to the broad areas that are captured within the dashboard is a good suggestion, and I think that's a useful way to bring forward some of those other activities, changes, challenges, which are sources of intelligence around risk and uncertainty, in particular the landscape. The other major area of risk intelligence, if you like, is what sits behind this in all of the one-page management plans for every one of those areas on the dashboard. And in that, the accountability model is that there's an ELT lead and a business lead that are close to those particular activities or area of risk or uncertainty. They also provide their direct perspective on not only the overall area, but as that area is broken into its component parts, i.e. the key sub-risks or concerns related to that, the controls, their perspective around the effectiveness of controls, and that aggregates into that green, yellow or amber rating that you see that sits directly under each of those statements. So the sources of risk intelligence are, first of all, the sentiment survey of ELT and councillors, the one-page plans and the input from those who are close to those particular areas, the business lead and the ELT lead, the results from assurance activities or checking or reviews that occur, and all captured within the supported one-page plans that sit below this.
Okay. I mean, sentiment is one thing. I mean, dare I say it, councillors somewhat live in their own little bubble world, and so do ELT to some extent. So we're living in a little bubble really. And should we be tapping into other bubbles to I mean, is there scope, for example, to do a wider community sentiment heat map to, if you like, essentially validate or invalidate the sentiments that are coming through on through this process?
I think there's two quite different things around an external community engagement and general sentiment or reputation type approach, and this which is intended to provide perspective from those who either have an understanding of the operational activities or are accountable for aspects of operational governance activities and therefore have a basis to provide an informed or a view or a sentiment. So part of this is that we are looking for a sentiment from those who either have a direct governance or leadership role or are accountable for the operational area, i.e. should have some ability to provide a basis for that sentiment. I'm not sure that those outside of the organisation would have enough information or knowledge to provide a considered view on the range of topics that are covered on this dashboard.
Yeah, but I'm somewhat challenged that given the nature of some of those questions. For example, confidence from the community, that could be quite revealing to having that perspective. Or going to your proposition, is there merit in going to say level 3 in the organisation and doing a similar scope on a regular basis? So I'm just looking at ways that we can, if you like, increase the level of certainty around what the drawings we take from it.
I understand it.
Okay. I think that Councillor Harding was about to move that paper.
Yes, I'll do that, please.
Noted. Is that what we're doing? Receive and considered. Can someone second that?
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Curtin. Everyone, no one wants to talk to the motion? Those in favour?
Aye.
All right, do we want to have a short adjournment as we go into public excluded, perhaps, for people to stretch their legs and have a quick coffee? So, should I move into public excluded now? Yeah. So, where's my wording that I need?
Here.
So, is it this one? Did you update
Yep,
it?
that's
it. Okay, so I'm moving that we exclude the public from this section of the meeting, being agenda item 5, legal update.
I'll add that in there, yes.
And attachments to item 4. with the general subject of the item being considered while the public excluded, the reasons for passing the resolution and the specific grounds under the Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act for passing the resolution are to maintain the effective conduct of public affairs by protecting councillors and or council employees and contractors or consultants from improper pressure or harassment, and to prevent the disclosure or use of official information for improper gain or improper advantage around controls, and to prevent the disclosure of information that's legally privileged. Can someone second that motion, please? Councillor McIntosh, thank you. Everyone in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Good, thank you. So we'll move into public excluded and we will pause for a break.